Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. My name is Jose Lamas. I'll be with Hire No More, taking you through the Risk Rater journey. I think we have a couple of things we want to accomplish today, kind of show you all what we're seeing in the marketplace with regards to the regulator, how they want to see methodologies and risk assessment be done, and kind of the value added with Risk Rater, how we can assist you with your risk assessment, how we're aligned with what regulators are looking for in our methodology. I'm going to take you through a presentation, 5 or 6 slides, and then we're going to go into the demo of the software, and then we're going to look at some of the different charts and tools and business intelligence models that Risk Rater has. Again, like I said before, I'm joined today by Hire No More, one of the co-founders of Risk Rater. He'll be introducing himself shortly and then taking you through a few slides of the presentation, and then we'll get started. Let's share it here. Hire, I hand it off to you, my friend.
Thank you so much, Jose. And again, welcome to everybody who's joining us today. So today we're going to be going over the Risk Rater application, but we're going to put this first into context. Really what does Risk Rater do, and why is it so important that an organization really know how to put together a proper risk assessment? So if we can go to the next slide, Jose. We can start off by, obviously, many of you have seen that over time, not only FinCEN, but obviously all the regulators, and no matter what country you've been in, have been really talking about how do you establish a really strong AML CFT program. And at the heart of all of this, and with FinCEN's proposed rule that you see here, that came out on June 28th of 2024, request for comments, you'll basically see that the risk assessment really is named as being at the core of being able to develop a proper compliance program. So the foundation for creating this compliance program within your organizations really is understanding the inherent risks that are particular to your organization. Now, obviously, there are certain things that are common throughout different organizations and through the financial industry, but we really have to look at what risks are present in your organization, which are pretty unique to you because all organizations offer different products, different services through different channels. And although the product, services, and channels may be similar across different organizations, what's really unique to them is the client base and where they're located, the types of clients that they have, the activity that they do, and the geographies where they're located and where they have business with. So we really place great emphasis on making sure we've developed a tool with a proper framework to be able to come up with the proper risk assessment that'll meet your regulator expectations. Jose, if you can move to the next slide. So one of the main issues with today's risk assessments is, even though the regulator says you should have a risk assessment methodology, you should have a proper risk assessment in place, they provide some guidance, but they never really give you a published risk assessment methodology and hand it to you saying, this is the methodology you should be using. So many risk officers, compliance risk managers struggle with, do I have a proper risk assessment methodology in place? And the good thing is, with Risk Rater, we've actually incorporated a risk assessment methodology that's been in place and developed over 25 years of one of our partners' consulting business, where the company has actively developed risk assessments, done risk assessments, met with regulators, and the methodology behind Risk Rater is a proven methodology that's been in place for a long time and has passed regulatory muster. And we always make sure we keep it up to date in terms of the new requirements as laws change, right? So national priorities being changed, cryptocurrency coming, for example, into play in a lot of organizations. We are constantly updating the Risk Rater tool to make sure there is a proper methodology. But the issue inside organizations is it's costly. It takes a lot of time to do a risk assessment. A lot of us on the phone right now are accustomed to doing Excel-based analysis. In fact, for most of the time that our founding partner was doing consulting on risk assessments, dealt with Excel all the time. And you have huge amount of data that may not even fit in an Excel anymore. So large, medium-sized organizations don't even can't even post their transaction volumes on an Excel because it's not large enough, right? So you have several Excels to deal with. You have a team of analysts trying to put all of this information together, trying to do the analysis of the data. just to be able to do the proper risk assessment. And because it's such a manual process, it's complex and it's prone to a lot of errors. There's a lot of data coming from different sources. There's different formulas in different spreadsheets. The connectivity of those formulas is a challenge. And then version control is an issue. And then I think one of the real key problems is today's risk assessment process, and the way the market pretty much does it is, it's a one-time event that's done at the end of a risk assessment period, and it's backward looking. There's really not much you can do. You basically take all of your prior year's data, for the most part, whether you do it internally or give it to a consultant, and then you kind of identify areas where you were strong and areas where you were very weak. But you can't do anything about it. It's a reactive and a backward-looking process where you're just saying, okay, this is where I kind of need improvement. And you've already written that in a risk assessment report because it already happened, so you don't have time to really correct those things. What we did with RiskRater, and you'll see during the demo, and I'm sure Jose will focus on a lot of the elements that help you to do this, we're actually inverting the whole process. We're making this a risk management tool. So with RiskRater, even though you'll have all of the elements to be able to analyze your risk, check your control environment, see how strong it is, you'll also be able to see where you're not doing things correctly throughout the year, because you can run risk assessments on a quarterly basis. Quarter by quarter, you can run risk assessments, and at the end of the year, write your written report. But throughout the quarters that you're running those risk assessments, our tool will point out areas of weakness, and it'll also point out some recommendations as to how you can improve your compliance and your risk posture as well. It'll tell you perhaps things that you need to put in place, and then you can go and you can model those changes and see what the effect of implementing those changes could be on your scores going forward. Because risk is not stagnant. Risk moves over time. You add new clients every day. The clients change perhaps where they're transacting. The types of activity that you're seeing from one month may vary to the next month. So you want to be able to very quickly understand where risk is moving outside of your risk appetite or your risk tolerance level. And that you can accomplish with RiskRater. So with that in mind, we'll show you a little bit of some of the screens. We will show you how we can automate this whole process, take it away from that manual Excel-based process, automate it with file uploads. We'll do our calculations. We'll do the quantitative and qualitative analysis. And one of the things that RiskRater really is known for is this quantitative bottom-up approach of your data. So we've met with FinCEN on a couple of occasions. We were invited actually by FinCEN to present to all the US-based regulators on what our tool does. And one of the key distinguishing features of our platform, as mentioned by them, is that when we calculate probability and inherent risk, we do this based on real transactions, a bottom-up approach based on true transactions. So your probability calculations are exact. And this a bottom-up approach of analyzing and taking into account both qualitative and quantitative factors in the view of FinCEN, and their comment to us was, this is the way a risk assessment should be done. So we've incorporated that process into RiskRater, allowing it to be an automated tool. And then again, the proactive nature of the tool, the dynamic nature of the tool allows you to drill down into areas of interest. It shows you some reporting. And we've also really focused on how you tell the story of the risk within your organization and how you show third parties that you know exactly what's going on with compliance-related risk within your organization. And we'll touch upon that throughout the demo as well. So now I'll pass it on to Jose, who will go into a little more detail and walk you through the demo, most of the demo. Jose, please.
Good here. I'll just have one more slide I wanted to show you all. At RiskRater's heart, at its core, you're really getting just two risk scores. You're getting your inherent risk score and your residual risk score. To get those risk scores, we use these 5 categories, the 5 key categories that most are using to get their BSA AML risk assessments: geography risk, customer risk, product, services, and channels. The inherent risk, we're quantifying inherent risk based on the volume of transactions and the client base by geography and its customers' use of the entity's products, services, and channels. Then we're getting your impact. We're loading up all these risk events in the background and asking you to rate it on an impact value scale of 0 to 4. We multiply that by the probability of each risk event happening, and that's how you're getting your inherent risk score. Then your residual risk, we're taking into account your mitigating factors and controls and seeing what you're doing to mitigate that inherent risk, therefore giving you a residual risk score based on not only the mitigating factors, but the amount of strength you have behind each and every single one. So I'm going to pass along here over to the demo. I'm going to turn off my screen because I'm going to be looking away, so I don't want anybody to think I'm looking away from the. Yeah, 1 second. All right, so here you'll see the RiskRadar landing page. Do you see it, Harold?
Yes.
All right, great. So here you'll have all your previous risk assessments. We can do up to 4 a year, as Harold was saying. So we have 3 years worth of risk assessments typically loaded on this page. So in theory, you can have up to 12 different risk assessments here to choose from. With the assessment period, you'll be able to decide which one you kind of want to go back and review. So we'll just go into this first one here. This is the configuration page of RiskRadar. This is where you'll be loading all your data and loading up all the products, services, and channels that you have. I'm going to go column by column, starting with the left and working my way to the right. Just the assessment info, the basic information of the bank. We're using Clover Bank as a demo institution here. The financial institution country, local currency. As Harold was mentioning, we are going to be analyzing transactions from a particular assessment period. So as long as you tell us what the cutoff is, we'll be able to load up all those specific transactions and calculate the probability of risk for each and every one of those. So we ask that you just put the assessment period here. It could be 18 months, could be 12 months, 4 months, whatever you want to analyze and look over as your risk profile. Down here, you'll have the branches list. You can load up all your different branches. And as you'll see further along in the demo, you'll be able to see how exactly the risk profile is different from one branch to the other branch. You can do kind of an analysis of the different styles of risk for each and every branch. Over in the middle here, we have here the products, services, and channels. So we're going to be uploading here what products, services, and channels the institution has. I'll just go here into products. We have pretty much every product an institution could have. You would just click yes here that you have that product, and then you'll be asked a series of yes or no questions. Just scroll down here, click on the product that you have, yes or no questions. And what RiskRadar is doing behind the scenes is it's loading up the different risk events that pertain to that particular product. If you don't have a particular product, it's no big deal. You just unclick it and it will not ask you those yes or no questions. But what we're doing now is starting to build out that inherent risk score we were talking about. Same idea for services. You click here, click on the services box, yes or no questions. So. Same idea for channels. Up here, you're going to be weighting the risk categories. So we have those 5 categories: customer base, products, service, channels, and geography. These are the percentages we have as default, as we see as to be best practices in the industry, but we allow you to edit that and change the weightings as you see fit. Nobody knows your organization better than you do. So we just ask you to change up those risk category percentages and write a little memo as to why you wanted to do that. Save it and continue. The data collectors are 3 files we're going to be sending you. Now, you might have noticed before, we haven't loaded the customer base or geography into the categories. That's because we're getting that information from these 3 files, specifically the products and services files. We're going to be sending you Excel spreadsheets with queries with mandatory or optional fields. And that's where we're going to get all of the transactions of the bank, customer ratings, what client used what product and how they used it. And that's how we're loading up all the customer base and geography risk onto our profile, onto your profile. Down here, we have the risk event impact values. So I'm on the right column now at the bottom. click here, and this has all the risk events for the 5 categories that pertain to that, to what you wrote, to what you answered in the yes or no's for each of those categories. Risk event here, impact, the little I here will let you impact it, rate it from 0 to 4, 0 meaning no impact, 4 meaning high impact. If you need to change it, if you don't see that that is applicable to your organization, just please write a little memo as to why. But this is the last piece of that inherent risk score we're talking about. We're going to take the probability of each of these risk events happening and multiplying it by the impact score that you give in that particular risk event. We also have, we're sticking with AML BSA for this purposes of this demo, but we also have the OFAC sanctions list as well, if you want to run that risk assessment. So now we have the inherent risk score. Now we have to calculate the residual risk score. And we do that by looking at what mitigating factors, what controls you have in place in order to mitigate the risk events that you've rated previously. Coming here to mitigating factors, I'll open up products here. You'll see a series of yes or no questions to give us an idea of your residual risk score. We also incorporate the national priorities, Clinton's national priorities here, as you can see, into both our products and services categories. Same idea for services, geography, customer, and channels. Just mitigating factors to give us an idea of how you're mitigating that risk. I'm not going to go into the risk matrix. Now you're done with the configuration, with the setup process, and now we're going to see what the results show of what you've entered. So here's the consolidated BSA AML risk assessment. We also break it down by category, which I'll get into in a second, but I want to just go over this consolidated risk assessment first. You see here by category which ones are more inherently riskier than others. And the risk classification here on the right shows you the risk score when taking into account that residual risk score. Typically, for clients, we'll have a reason for the risk rating here. As you can see, a little explanation as to what you could work on, what was strong and what was weak for that particular category. We'll have the residual value here, taking into account the mitigating factors you had for customer base, the weighting you gave it before, and then that weighted value risk score. Add those up, you get a residual risk score of 6 and an inherent risk score of 8.32. You can go to each category, as I was saying before, and see, what went wrong or what went right. As you can see here, customer base, you have a moderate risk classification. But in geography, for example, you have an inherent risk of 9.25 and still a risk classification of high as your residual risk. So let's go into geography. And these are the 4 risk events that pertain to geography risk. As you can see here, the first one, the financial institution or any branch is located at a high-risk area, such as high-intensity drug trafficking area or high-intensity financial crime area and or high-risk international geographic location. Probability of that happening is extremely high, and you rated it as very impactful, giving it a 12 inherent risk score. Of the 13 mitigating factors that are applicable to that risk event, 9 are in place, which seems pretty good, right? But the 4 that are not in place seemingly are the most important ones that are not available, that you do not have implemented in your organization, giving you an effectiveness of control of just 1 and a residual risk score of 12. You can click here on the mitigating factors, open that up, and see which ones you do have in place and which ones you do not have in place. Now you know for the next time, and I'll show you how you implement those moving forward, you'll be able to model the impact it will have on your risk score and how you can improve your risk score moving forward. I wanted to show you another example. We'll go here to customer risk. This risk event, the third one, a significant number of accounts owned by foreign legal entities. Well, it's very probable, highly impactful, a really high inherent risk score. You have 14 of the 17 mitigating factors in place, but we're giving an effectiveness of control of 2. We feel that that's an adequate amount of controls you have in place. Here are the 14 that you do. the 3 that you don't. Therefore, moderate high of 6, you can always work on those 3 that you don't have to even lower that residual risk score even lower. A couple more features I want to show you before I hand it over to Jairo. The top 5. In the live version, it's the top 10s, but here you see your top 5 strongest controls based by probability, impact, and how many mitigating factors you have in place. Clearly, the top 5, you're doing pretty well in mitigating that risk. But almost more importantly, top 5 weakest controls. For example, credit card risk. Credit card may accept payments in excess of total balance due resulting in a positive balance. As high as probabilities you can have, as high as impact you can have, basically all the mitigating factors. But now you know those 2 are crucial in lowering that residual risk score. Lastly, I'm going to show you the what-if scenarios. So you can take those mitigating factors and see what would change, how it would change my risk score if I were to implement those new policies. So let's put a geography. And let's say you wanted to change for the next time you run the risk assessment next quarter, you wanted to have this in place, you wanted to have this in place, and maybe these 2. 4 mitigating factors in place, controls by the next 10. Well, you see here, it jumped from a 6 to a 4.46. Now you know that next time you run the risk assessment, if you have those 4 controls in place, you'll have a much stronger risk profile, not only in geography, where we just were, but also overall. That's pretty much the risk matrix. I will now hand it over to Jairo, who will go over the RA charts and the business intelligence one. Take it away, Jairo.
Thank you very much, Jose. Let me see if I can share my screen so I can walk through that. You see RiskRadar again?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So I want to make emphasis on a couple of things that Jose said, because under the base subscription of RiskRadar, you are allowed to run this risk assessment every quarter, okay? So when he mentions these features such as the top 5 and this what-if scenario building, and also under each one of these categories, the fact that we clearly outline which risk events are not being mitigated appropriately, and we've mentioned these additional controls that can be in place, this is where I point to the fact that RiskRadar is really a risk management tool. Because if you do everything that Jose just said to you on a quarterly basis, where you go in, you look at your scores, you look at which categories are presenting or which risk events are not being adequately mitigated, you look at the recommendations that we're highlighting in this case here, you implement those recommendations in this quarter or the quarter afterwards, you'll be in a process of constant improvement. So the idea around RiskRadar is not only to do the risk assessment, but give you the tools and the visibility into how you can improve your risk posture over time. That's one of the key things I wanted to mention. So to me, it's really about looking at your results on a quarterly basis, looking at the recommendations or the controls that aren't being used, going into this top 5 weakest controls. I tell all the clients, if you're going to start anywhere, go into the top 5 weaknesses, because as you go into these, and you'll notice that these weak controls look across all of the categories. So it looks at customer controls, product controls, services, channels, geographic controls, etc. And it pulls out the 5 weakest in this risk assessment this quarter. Okay. So if you go into, for example, here's credit card risk, here's a customer base related risk. So you have a product risk, you have a customer risk, you have a services risk under Funds Transfer International, 2 of them, and then you have another product risk under demand deposit account. So these belong to different categories, but we're pulling them out as areas that should be really focused on. So if you go in, you do the what if scenario, you implement the recommended controls that are underneath each of these mitigating factor categories. The next time you run the risk assessment, hopefully your scores will be improving. And not only that, you'll be able to show that progress to your regulator. So one thing I wanted to mention here is every time you run that risk assessment, we will save that risk assessment on your homepage, okay? So and we'll save it for 3 years. So if you run quarterly risk assessments for a 3-year period, you'll be able to go back to your homepage and look at every single risk assessment that you ran over the last 3 years. So you'll have 12 risk assessments here at the end of 3 years. And then when the regulator comes to visit you, you can clearly go back to the prior ones and show them what my last risk assessment looked like, what I implemented going forward, and how I was showing improvement over time. So those are one of the tools that you have to really, talk to your regulator, whether it be your regulator or it could be your correspondent bank if you're downstream if you're a downstream respondent bank and your correspondent bank's compliance officer visits you, or it could be the credit committee, for example, or the risk committee or the compliance committee. You'll be able to show them everything that you've done to improve the risk posture over time. And I think that's really, really key. I want to go into the reporting features. What Jose showed you in terms of the risk matrix, again, it's updated every time you run a risk assessment on a quarterly basis. And everything that I will show you going forward as well is updated on a quarterly basis too. So we have 2 different reporting modules. The first one is our risk assessment charts. We call them the RA charts. And these are updated based on the refresh of data that you do every quarter. They will change. They aren't dynamic reports. They're static reports, but they're summary reports of that specific risk assessment for the last quarter. And then I will show you a business intelligence module that's also embedded in our solution, which really gives you tremendous power of telling that story to your regulator, to the compliance officer at the correspondent bank that you're working with. It really allows you to show that you have complete demand over and knowledge of the risks that are inherent within your organization. So let me go into the first part, which is the RA charts. So you'll notice that they really correspond to the different categories that we're measuring. You'll have customer base reports, product reports, service reports, channel reports, and geography reports. The first one that we show you is the basic heat map of how your scores came. So you can cut and paste this into a report, for example, for your risk committee. You can do anything that you like with this table in terms of reporting, okay? So it gives you the AML risk profile, and it also gives you the OFAC risk profile. And as Jose mentioned, let me just go quickly back. We do the BSA risk assessment, but we also do the OFAC risk assessment as well. We have OFAC-related risk events here to analyze as well. I just want to make sure everybody understood that too. Okay, so these are the basic reports. You'll see your scores, be able to quickly see at a high level where you're at. And then for each one of the categories, we give you customized reporting. So total number of accounts. We don't like you to have unassigned accounts. So we work very closely with you to make sure that your data is clean so that we don't get these types of situations where you have unassigned categories. So we do this to show you what it would look like if you didn't have proper governance of your data. But we work very closely with you to avoid these types of errors showing up in your reports. Now, one of the things that Jose perhaps didn't mention was we have been working with the transaction monitoring systems of several of them, Verafin, ECS, Monitor Plus, and others, to automate the process of getting the data into RiskRadar. So most of our clients today are automatically receiving feeds, or we are receiving automatic feeds from their transaction monitoring system with the information that we need in those data collectors that were mentioned by Jose. So that automates that process even more. Okay, so on customer base, you'll see these types of reports, a distribution of the risk, business accounts, how many do you have, the percentage of the use. So you'll see the distribution in different formats. You'll be able to see customer account types, how many accounts of which type are you doing, how many folks are using which products, special classifications, what are PEPs doing in terms of value and volume, economic activity. If you give us the NAICS codes of your client base, we'll be able to tell you very quickly, how they're distributed in terms of what activities they're dedicated to. Stability of the customer base, we look at the quantity of risk here. So customers in which country, for example, the number of accounts, the percentage of the accounts for those specific ones, What are your top 5 customers doing in terms of volume and value? What are the top 25 doing? And what is your total customer activity for that 12-month period that we've assessed? We also have some product maps here, product charts. And again, you can cut and paste this into your monthly presentations or your committee presentations so you get a feel for what's going on and present all of these findings. So value of debit and credit transactions across all deposit accounts, what's going on in your transactional accounts, what's going on through savings, through time deposits, and the total activity. So you see, these are very, very useful reports. Your loans, commercial loans, residential real estate loans, overdraft loans, etc. What does that look like? And as all of you know who have done risk assessments, this is the type of thing that needs to be included in your report, which is, the amount of risk that's going through these specific products. Services as well, service type with your heat map, service and channel distribution, number of transactions that are going through those services, what's going on with cash, what's going on with funds transfer, both on where are they coming from, where are they going to, so you can see volume and value as well here. Your ACH, correspondent accounts if you had them as well. What are the top accounts doing? On the channel side, you'll be able to see similar inherent risk and residual risk scores, what each channel is doing, the percent of traffic going through each one of those different channels. You can see branch level activity as well. So if you gave us that list that Jose referred to in terms of branches, you can see how many customers at each branch, how many accounts, what is the activity at that branch level specifically, which I think is very useful. And when I go into the business intelligence chart, you'll see that we can even do more with what's happening at the branch level. Geographical risk as well. Obviously, what's going in and out of high risk and moderate risk countries, very important for you to see, and the value of those. Breakdown of this information in terms of international ACH and other types of activity, and then the country of residency of the client base. So as you can see, these are typical charts that are included in risk assessment reports. We update this, as I said, on a quarterly basis. Every single time, these pictures will change, but you will have the history of those transactions in your homepage, and you can refer to them at any point that you want. Okay, so I want to move into the BI report. So embedded in the RiskRadar solution is Amazon QuickSight, which is their BI tool. And what we've done is we're giving you non-static reports now. These are reports that you can drill down. So one of the things, I think during my banking career, I was a correspondent banker, and most of my clients were Latin American banks. And as you can imagine, to be able to onboard those clients, it was always a very difficult discussion with my compliance officer. And I always thought, what if I had a tool that I would basically be able to tell my compliance officer or have my client show my compliance officer the risk profile of the institution. Who are their clients? What are their clients doing? Where are their transactions going? Because in the past, and before we have these types of tools at our disposal, it was just a discussion between me and their local compliance officer, and then I would have to write the findings, take them back to my compliance officer. Now, over the years, the compliance officer went traveling with me, but it was always this discussion as to what you have. So because of that, we took special care in giving RiskRadar a tool, a business intelligence tool, where we've taken all of the findings, we've uploaded all of the data that you have given us, both before and after we ran the risk assessment. So there's some visualizations that are based on pure data that you fed to us. And then there's visualizations that are based on the results of the risk assessment. And you can slice and dice those. So what we're showing you here is, here's several default visualizations that are included in a RiskRadar product. This is AWS QuickSight. You have 12 months worth of data. We also have put in place some default filters. So you can see different visualizations, and you can imagine you have your regulator in front of you. Imagine you're in front of risk committee. Imagine you're in front of your correspondent bank, and they ask a really simple question. For example, on your client base, they will ask you, over the past several years, how many new accounts have you opened? Real simple question, happens all the time. So you can go into this data, and our demo goes back to 2022. So let's say we have in this particular demo client had 395 new client account openings in 2022. Well, that's kind of interesting, but maybe I want to know a little bit more. Maybe I want to know, of those 395 clients, how many of those were high-risk clients? So just by going in and clicking on the filters, you automatically update all the visualizations, and you can very quickly tell them, of those 395 clients, only 42 of those were high-risk clients. Now, you can continue clicking down, for example, to here, and well, high risk, but how many of those were, for example, PEPs? And it'll drill down and show you that 12 of those were PEPs. And it'll allow you to continue. We're in demo mode, but it'll allow you to continue, and you can actually go down to the account level within the solution and show them a little bit more of what's happening at that specific level. Okay, so these filters have been put in place. They're default filters, and as you can see, there are different types of filters in place. So you can basically, if they ask you, well, I'm really concerned that you may have clients in high-risk jurisdictions, like perhaps, I don't know, Venezuela, which is a very popular jurisdiction to ask about lately. So you would basically click off select all, choose Venezuela, and all of these visualizations would change based on the risk or of the clients that are Venezuelan-based clients, for example. So real easy to slice and dice the information on any one of these visualizations. You can basically sort by whether they're business accounts or individual accounts, and also the special class accounts, you can filter and focus in on them specifically. So, you know, are they import-export companies, NGOs, cash-intensive businesses, trust companies, etc. You can sort by that as well. And then, are they PEPs or not? Are they, you know, active, blocked, canceled? So sometimes you give us data, and that account may have been active for 8 months. You might want to see which were the accounts that were closed over the 12-month period, which ones were the ones that were blocked over the 12-month period. We'll be able to show you that very quickly. Again, going back to the client coverage and the branch information, if you gave us branch information, we can, for example, give you this information. So this is a breakdown of the number of accounts that are being held or managed out of a specific branch. So this is the main branch, which has 9,167 accounts. I can drill down by employee name. So what it does is it's actually telling me at the main branch, the account officers that are responsible for those specific clients. So it tells me this account officer, for example, has been assigned to 1,381 clients, okay? And then I can use my filters. I can basically say, okay, show me how many of those are high risk. And then I have picture change, right? So it was 1,381, only 106 are high risk. But you might be able to start seeing some patterns that you as a compliance officer or as a risk professional may find a little bit disturbing. For example, when we demoed this to a Mexican bank, they were having problems with branches close to the border of the US. And when they ran these observations, they were able to see that there was a specific account officer that was really responsible for a lot of high-risk accounts. And yeah, he was actively bringing high-risk accounts into the organization. So they were able to see that and stop that activity very quickly. So it's just some of the things that we give to you as really nice tools that'll help enhance your ability to see what's going on. I'm going to go into some other tabs just to give you a feel for what else you can see. So another very common question is your outbound activity. How much is going out to each one of these servers? So you'll see volume and value, number of funds transferred transactions. Again, this is demo mode, so the volumes are, you know, typically not as high as you'll typically see, right? So 64,884 transactions worth $5.3 million. But as a compliance officer, what does concern you? Maybe you want a very quick look at your volumes going in and out of each country. So these are transfers to, this is a visualization that we prepared as part of our default visualizations. So you'll see transfers to high-risk countries and transfers from high-risk countries. So what you could do on a occasional basis is go through this and see if anything kind of points out areas of concern. You know, remember, you have volume and value here. So the line is giving you value, this is giving you volume. So are you concerned about 30 transactions going to Seychelles for a total of $1.55 million? Maybe yes, maybe no. And if you are, you can click on here and you can go down to the beneficiary country level and see what's going on with those transactions in Seychelles. who's making those transactions, and get some more information. But this is also a tool that you can choose to show your regulator that you have complete demand of information. You have the data that shows you where your risks are, okay? Or we can do this on a geospatial basis as well. Another couple of features of this business intelligence module is you can always see all of the activity of your clients. We give you detailed reports on every single one of your clients. So, and you can also filter that as well. But at the high level, you can see all of the traffic. Let me just scoot down here if I can to the next report. As you can see, we're masking the account number and the account ID here for demo purposes. The name of the product that they're using, the employee name, when the account was opened, what the ending balance at the end of the period was, total credits and debits to the account. And you can see some other information as well related to that party. And then you can, if you need to take that information offline, simple click here, and you can export all of that data into an Excel spreadsheet, take it offline, start doing some pivot table analysis if you'd like, and you'll be able to work with that data in a different format if you want. And again, you can see here, here's your account detail. Hopefully it'll open. I think it'll open up on my next screen, but we'll be able to show you where it kind of opens up. So here you are. So what did I do? I just pretty much extracted all the information. It's here. Now I can create my pivot tables. I can do my analysis on Excel any way I wish. And that's available to export for any one of the visualizations that we showed you. Okay. I want to go also to this products and services vault. So what we also did was we wanted to include a very powerful report writing tool. So what we basically did was, remember that one of those files is a product-based file, and the other file you gave us is a services-based file as well. So we've taken that, and every single field of that report or of the Excel spreadsheet that we require in terms of data, we've turned into a query-capable field, okay? So here you can see the reports that we can generate, the one that I just showed you, okay? You'll be able to extract that. But you can very quickly go into all of your data that you've given us so far, and you can sort that data by product. You can combine show me credit card activity with clients that are risk rated high, for example. And just by clicking on the specific parameters that you're looking for, we'll be able to generate an ad hoc report of all of that information that you're looking for. You can combine any one of these filters in any way to create on-demand reports. We think that's a very, very powerful tool. Then you have the services data vault as well. So this comes from the services file, and you can do exactly the same. So these are our default visualizations. We also would, for a reasonable additional fee, if you had some visualizations that you'd like us to prepare for you, we can certainly do that. We talked to you about, for example, you can tell me every month I go to committee and this is the type of a report that I have to produce. You can refresh this data to us on a monthly basis, run your risk assessments on a quarterly basis, but we will take that refresh data, create the dashboard that you're going to present to your management, and create those specific visualizations customized to what you're looking for. So for example, one of the ones that a client asked us, which was really interesting, I thought it was a very interesting visualization, was they wanted us to map the scores that they had in each one of the categories to their risk appetite by quarter. This would allow them to see how risk was moving over time. And if the risk scores ever went above their risk tolerance level, they could immediately see it and then take action. So their idea was, if they saw it get close to the risk tolerance level or exceed it, they would go back into the risk assessment tool here at RiskRater, look at those risk events related to that specific category that was going out of sync, and then take those proactive measures to correct and implement new controls in place. Okay, so I guess that's my piece of the demo. If you have any questions, please put them on the chat as well. And I'm going to hand it back to Jose, who's going to take us through the final slides and and finalize the demo. Thank you, Jose.
Thank you, Jairo.
Let me stop my sharing here.
Just wanted to point out one more thing too on the demo. I guess just to reiterate, it also comes in Spanish. You can change the language of English to Spanish. So I know there's a lot of Spanish speakers on here that were probably wondering that. So it is in Spanish as well. And I will now hand it over to my.
I think, Jose, maybe we should share. Let me just share the Spanish while you're doing that. Let me just share the.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, so they're seeing my screen. Very quickly, you can toggle. This is fully in English. Let's go to the risk matrix so you can see everything in Spanish here. Okay, you can quickly see everything has been put in Spanish. The client base, the risk events, all of the titles have been translated to Spanish. So this will make it very easy if you're in a Spanish-speaking country to go through this. So Jose, do you want to explain, I guess, the subscription differences as well while you're here?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So we have two different packages of RiskRadar. We call it RiskRadar Plus, RiskRadar Premium. RiskRadar Plus will be the subscription implementation cost. Along with that come the validation of those controls of the mitigating factors. We serve as a third party and we'll validate those to see that they're aligned with our methodology and they're aligned with the risk score that you received. RiskRadar Premium will be all that plus the final report, the written report. We've talked to clients that like to do it themselves. We've talked to clients that pretty much saying, I don't like this. I want someone else to do it for me. So that's where we come in. We have, as Jairo mentioned before, people, consultants on staff, 25, 30 years of experience doing risk assessments. So it's no sweat off our back to take that responsibility from you. We have a pricing guarantee of 3 years. So when you would see a proposal, it's not a 3-year contract or anything, it's year by year. We will have that year 1 price, and then the year 2 and 3 price will be just a subscription. If you want us to validate the controls again, if you want us to write the final report again, if you had chosen RiskRadar Premium previously, we can do that at cost. We'll talk separately when the time comes to give you a price for that. But the subscription will be part of the package for all 3 years. Next steps, usually, if you're interested in learning more about RiskRadar, we have a RiskRadar client profile. We will send that to you, kind of get an idea of the size of the institution, the scope of work we'd have to do, what products, channels, and services you all have, how many transactions a month are inflows and outflows of the institution. And we'll be able to provide you with a quote, general quote, then maybe, obviously after a discussion and after going through the proposal, we can go to next steps in a more formal proposal. Any questions in the Q&A?
Jose, we had a couple, if I may.
Sure.
From one of the individuals, I just completed my risk assessment. They're asking, do I need to wait until next year's assessment to get the RiskRadar platform?
Thank you, Robert. No, you do not. So a lot of you look at RiskRadar, you think, okay, I don't need to get RiskRadar now because I just did my risk assessment 3 months ago. The beauty of RiskRadar is you can start integrating it with your transaction monitoring system and into your institution to get a head start on the next year's risk assessment. You're able to run it quarter by quarter. You're able to see the ebbs and flows of your risk profile as you give us more transactions and more data. Run it 2 or 3 times, and then for next year's risk assessment, you'll already be set up. You'll have all the integration in place, and you'll be able to run the risk assessment one final time for that year and have us validate those controls, write the final report if you want us to, and then finally be able to turn in your risk assessment. But it's not something that you need to only use when it's time for the risk assessment, when it's time for that 1 year look back at your risk profile. It's a dynamic tool. You can use it as needed throughout the entire year.
Yeah, let me just add to that, Jose. I've actually told clients it's probably, they'd say, I just did my risk assessment. I'm going to wait till the end, the next year's risk assessment. Well, it defeats the purpose of the tool, right? So the purpose of the tool really is to put you in a much better position to have a better outcome of your next year's risk assessment. So if you start now, take advantage of all the recommendation tools. Take advantage of what we're pointing out are, gaps in your controls. Yes, you've had a prior report, but as I said, your risk is moving over time. You have new clients throughout the years. Maybe you introduced a new product. That happens occasionally. You want to be able to measure the risk of that new product also a quarter after it's actually have been put in place. So it really is to your advantage to use the RiskRadar platform throughout the year. And the earlier you do it before you actually have that printed risk assessment report, the better, because you're going to be able to improve over time so that when you finally write that report, the findings on that report are much stronger and you're in a much better position in the face of the regulators.
We had another question come in. On average, how long does it take to get set up to be using the tool?
A lot of it has to do with the quality of data that you give us. We're sending us 3 data collectors. We integrate with your transaction monitoring system. We have partnerships in place with several of the big ones, including Verafin, Ocean Systems, Monitor Plus are some of the ones we've worked with in the past. We've seen it done as little as 2 weeks. We've seen it done in as long as 6 to 8 weeks. It depends really on how aligned we are with the integration piece, meaning your transaction monitoring system, how easily we're able to pull the data from that transaction monitoring system or your core if it's not on your transaction monitoring system, and then go from there. Jairo, do you have anything to add on that process?
Yeah, I think really we've had experience across the board with different scenarios. So the quality of your data obviously is a key component to this, but we've been able to really speed up that assessment process for the periods going forward after your first risk assessment. Let me just explain that. The first one's the toughest one, as you can imagine, because we have to configure, we have to make sure that the connections are right, we have to make sure that you understand the data that you're giving us, and then we get a first look at the quality of that data. That first one may take a little longer than usual, but going forward, now that you know the extracts that you need, the type of data that we need, it really becomes an exercise in just getting the data and running it through our tool. And once you give us the data and you've configured, it's an overnight run, and you'll immediately the next day have all your risk assessment results every time you run it.
Great. Well, thank you all for joining. We'll be sending you this recording in very short time. We're just going to kind of get everybody's emails and send it out by the end of the week. If you have any further questions, please email me, Jairo, the rest of the team. We'll be more than happy to answer them. We'd love to hear back from you, any feedback. And obviously, if you want to see some pricing options, some of the different flexibility we have in that, or optionality we have in that regard, please reach out to me. I'll be happy to send you that RiskRadar profile, and we can get started on that front.
Yeah, and if you have any inquiries as well, you want to book a demo, you just can join us, go into our website, riskradar.com. There'll be a form there if you want to fill it out for a demo as well. For a unique demo to your organization with your staff.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.